Brightness or accuracy? Which one belongs in your room? Today we're comparing TCL's QM9K to Sony's BRAVIA 9. Two mini LED flagships that look similar on a spec sheet, but behave differently once you actually sit down to watch. One emphasizes peak light output and gaming features, while the other focuses on faithful HDR tone mapping, refined processing, and the kind of dimming behavior that disappears during movies. By the end, you'll know which one fits your space, your habits, and your budget. If you value raw HDR brightness, the QM9K is the stronger performer. Small peaks are very high on test slides, and the set maintains more of its intensity when larger portions of the frame turn bright. That extra ceiling is also felt in game mode, where the TCL stays bright even when low lag settings are enabled. The BRAVIA 9 is still legitimately bright, but it doesn't chase the same extremes as the QM9K. In real HDR, most titles are mastered around 1000 nits and are constrained by max fall, which limits how bright the average frame can get. You may see a very high max CLL in the metadata, but that number only marks the single brightest pixel in the content, not the overall level of the picture. TVs also tone map those tiny, brief peaks to keep the rest of the frame stable. That's why peak charts can overstate what you actually see. The TCL's extra headroom becomes visible when bright regions are large or held long enough to stress that backlight. In most scenes, where highlights are moderate in size and duration, the Sony and TCL look closer than their peak numbers suggest, because the content simply does not demand the TCL's full ceiling. Brightness is one thing, but HDR tone mapping really decides movie night, especially if you have purists watching the movie alongside you. Or, hey, maybe you're the purist. Either way, the BRAVIA 9 tracks the PQ curve far more faithfully than the QM9K. Near black detail is preserved, midtones sit where they should, and bright accents don't get overblown. Basically, the scene is rendered as the content creator intended. The QM9K, not so accurate. Shadows sit lower than intended, and midtones are slightly too bright. It increasingly gets worse after the content hits 600 nits, and by 4000 nits, the content is vastly overbrightened. Some people might love this, as it makes the image look exciting, but it's not strictly accurate. If your evenings are mostly narrative HDR in a dim space, Sony's tone mapping is a safer pick. But the average viewer likely won't care and might even prefer the TCL's look. When it comes to black levels, both use dense mini LED arrays and are excellent in real content. But the BRAVIA 9 holds a small edge in overall contrast with local dimming enabled. Bright objects and subtitles are outlined a touch more cleanly, and zone transitions look slightly smoother as highlights move. So you notice fewer artifacts at the leading or trailing edges. The QM9K still performs very well, and it has higher native contrast with dimming off. But that matters less because no one will watch these sets with local dimming disabled. Where the TCL does pull ahead is in black uniformity. Full field dark frames and fade to black moments look a bit cleaner on the QM9K. In short, the BRAVIA 9 is a hair better at dimming finesse and perceived contrast, while the QM9K is a touch cleaner on uniformity. Both TVs are extremely bright in SDR. In our real scene test, the BRAVIA 9 lands a bit higher at about 1000 nits, while the QM9K comes in at around 920 nits. On small test windows, the TCL hits far higher peaks, but that matters less for typical SDR viewing. On direct reflections, Sony holds a slight edge. Its glossy finish contains mirror-style reflections a bit better when a lamp or window lines up with the screen. Where TCL takes the lead is in ambient metrics. The QM9K's ambient black level raise is much lower, so blacks stay darker as room light increases, and its ambient color saturation drops less, so colors keep their punch in bright spaces. So even though Sony measures a touch brighter in real scene SDR, the TCL likely looks better in very bright rooms because blacks lift less and colors hold up more. Head-on, both produce convincing HDR color, and you won't see a huge difference between them. In SDR, the QM9K is more capable than the BRAVIA 9, but you're only likely to notice that when forcing the TV into a wider color gamut. They're also pretty similar in terms of viewing angle. Where they differ the most is in how accurate they are out of the box. Here, the edge goes to the Sony, as it's far more precise. That's not to say that the TCL isn't accurate. It is. It just isn't as accurate as the BRAVIA. Still, overall, colors are quite close. Yeah, we're seeing a pattern. These two TVs are trading blows. Now, there's a category where they're not trading blows. Gaming. Here, the QM9K is the far more flexible platform. Expect low input lag, VRR, 4K up to 144Hz, and even 288Hz support at 1080p, which is a nice bonus for PC gamers. You get two HDMI 2.1 ports for full bandwidth sources too. Game mode keeps the screen bright, so effects and HUD elements retain their impact, while latency stays low. The biggest boon of the QM9K, and of TCL's 2025 lineup in general, are its pixel transitions. They're very quick for an LED set, though not quite as quick as TCL's own QM8K. The overall feel is responsive and confident, especially for those of you who are used to gaming on an LED screen. The BRAVIA 9 also supports most of the same tech, but just not quite as well. While the Sony's input lag is low enough for a good playing experience, it's noticeably higher than that of the QM9K. Plus, while the QM9K supports 144 and 288 Hz, the Sony is limited to 120 Hz. Good enough for console gamers, but it's a bit limiting for everyone else. The biggest issue with the Sony, however, is its slow pixel response times, which lead to obvious blurring during quick gameplay. It also loses a bit more of its HDR brightness in game mode than the TCL does. So yes, you can game on the Sony, but you'll have a better time on the TCL. Let's counter Sony's weaker gaming performance with one of its strengths, image processing. Here, it's no contest. First, we've already shown how superior the Sony's PQ EOTF tracking is over the TCL. But the BRAVIA 9 cleans up compressed streams and challenging textures with a far steadier hand than the QM9K does. It reduces noise without polishing away real detail and keeps foliage, fabric, skin, and fine patterns cohesive. Again, the TCL is far from bad here. It matches the Sony in low-quality content smoothing. It also does a better job at removing macro blocking from noisy feeds, but it does lose more fine detail in the process. The Sony is better at upscaling and has slightly smoother gradients. Overall, it's a win for the Sony on processing, to, well, the surprise of no one. The QM9K runs a newer Google TV build with Gemini. Voice queries can be conversational and carry context. A presence sensor can wake an ambient screen with a clock, photos, or widgets when you enter the room, and go to sleep when you leave. If you like a screen that provides glanceable information when idle and natural voice control, you will use these features every day. The BRAVIA 9 offers a classic UI experience. It runs Google TV and feels polished, but it doesn't bring the same presence-aware layer or Gemini integration. If you prefer a quieter, film-centric experience, you won't miss them. If you want a living room hub with modern voice behavior, the TCL does feel fresher. Alright, so which should you buy? Well, these two TVs are very close, but there's a clear usage difference. First, for gaming, just get the TCL. It's the far superior gaming TV, and there's no contest there. If you want the most modern TV possible with full Gemini integration, then the TCL is also your pick. On the other hand, if you're a cinephile and you want the most accurate image possible, the BRAVIA 9 is superior there. It has better image processing, respects the content creator's intent, and in most cases is just as bright as the TCL, except in game mode. Then there's the price. The QM9K is far more expensive than the QM8K, but it's still sold for far less than the BRAVIA 9, typically. This leads us to say something that you've heard us say before. As good as the Sony BRAVIA 9 is, it's only an easy recommendation for purists with deep pockets. If you're not a purist, the QM9K will serve you better. And if you don't have deep pockets, well, you might want to shop for something even cheaper than the QM9K. That's it for a full comparison of the TCL QM9K and the Sony BRAVIA 9. How do you feel about it? Are you a purist who will buy the BRAVIA 9 no matter what? Or do you want to save some money with the QM9K? Let us know in the comments down below, and check our website for the complete measurement tables and calibration notes. Until next time, I'm Evan from RTINGS.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs.